Guess who's the richest man to have ever lived? John D. Rockefeller is considered the richest man to ever live. His net worth, when adjusted for inflation, would be more than $340 billion in today's currency, beating the richest person alive today, Elon Musk, by about $100 billion. Today, we'll see how Rockefeller became so successful through his entrepreneurial journey. And we'll also share his other secret strategies like perseverance and stress management that he used to gather so much wealth. John D. Rockefeller created the Standard Oil Company, the success of which made him the world's first billionaire and a celebrated philanthropist. He garnered both admirers and critics during his lifetime and after his death. Wall Street idolized his money-making abilities. Muckrake journalists exposed his unethical business practices, and his charitable cause created a legacy of generosity. John Davison Rockefeller was born on July 8, 1839, to William Avery Rockefeller and Eliza Davison in Richford, New York. His family later moved near Cleveland, Ohio, where he attended Cleveland Central High School before dropping out and starting his first job as an assistant bookkeeper, earning 50 cents per day. After success in that job, he partnered with Maurice B. Clark to start their own business in produce. The company, Clark and Rockefeller, earned $4,400 in the first year and $17,000 in the second, which is about $530,000 in today's currency. With the money he saved from his first job and a loan from his entrepreneurial snake oil salesman father, he opened his first business, a commodities brokerage, in 1859. Around the same time, in nearby Titusville, Pennsylvania, Edwin Drake and the Seneca Oil Company completed their first drilled oil well. A discovery of large underground oil reservoirs made accessible with new drilling technology created a boom of oil companies in Pennsylvania and Ohio. In 1870, Rockefeller joined in the oil business, along with his brother William, Samuel Andrews, Henry M. Flagler, and Stephen V. Harkness. Their business, the Standard Oil Company of Ohio, focused on oil refining, which had less variable costs than oil exploration and drilling. Rockefeller's contemporaries often commented on his fixation with cost saving and waste reduction, but in order to be the best, he also invested in research and development. Standard Oil brought as much labor in-house as they could and focused on finding markets for refinery byproducts. After knowingly buying fields in Ohio containing sour oil, Rockefeller relied on his research and development team to create a way to remove the oil impurities, which they eventually did, allowing him to cash in on oil no one else wanted. While free market capitalism led to the creation of numerous oil companies, it also, to Rockefeller, created unpredictable chaos in the industry, with oil refineries undercutting each other on prices, creating wide fluctuations. In order to remove this marketplace inefficiencies, Rockefeller began acquiring competing oil refineries. Within the first 3 months of 1872, he had bought out, shut down, and bankrupted 22 of his 26 Cleveland competitors. Unsympathetic to goodwill pricing, he offered a fair market price for refineries that were losing money with outdated equipment. However, as Muckrake journalists later pointed out, the refineries were losing money because of Standard Oil's monopoly. Its very size meant the Standard Oil, unlike other refineries, could negotiate a railroad discount by promising 60 carloads of oil daily, which appealed to railroad owners wanting to maintain a high and steady volume. These train rebates helped Standard Oil keep transportation costs low. Other refineries could not compete. Oil and railroad tycoons proposed a deal to fix transportation costs called the Southern Improvement Company, but public outcry quickly stopped further negotiations. In 1882, Standard Oil Trust created a network of Standard Oil companies throughout the country, led by a board of trustees, where Rockefeller owned over 1/3 of the certificates. By the late 1880s, Standard Oil controlled 90% of American refineries. This control of the market, along with the Southern Improvement Company scandal, caught the attention of politicians, who started passing antitrust laws and prohibiting train rebates. Rockefeller had a strict no talking to the press rule, which did nothing to combat the wildly popular scathing critique of Standard Oil by journalist Ida Tarbell. Rockefeller eventually retired from daily operations in 1895, at the age of 56, but stayed in a figurehead role as president. Rockefeller's wealth soared as kerosene and gasoline grew in importance, and he became the richest person in the country, controlling 90% of all oil in the United States at its peak. Standard Oil controlled more than 90% of the oil industry, causing legislators to take notice. Congress passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, and the Federal Trade Commission was created. Rockefeller had to dissolve Standard Oil and allow each property to be run by others, though the corporation's board maintained control over the individual properties. In 1909, New Jersey changed its incorporation law to effectively allow a recreation of the trust in the form of a single holding company. Rockefeller retained his normal title as president until 1911, and he kept his stock. However, in 1911, the Supreme Court found Standard Oil Company in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. At this time, Standard still had a 70% market share of the refined oil market, but only 14% of the U.S. crude oil supply. The court ruled that the trust originated in illegal monopoly practices and ordered it to be broken up into 34 new companies. These companies included Continental Oil, which is now part of the ConocoPhillips, Standard of India, which is now part of BP, Standard of California, which became Chevron, Standard of New Jersey, which later became Exxon and is now part of ExxonMobil, Standard of New York, which became Mobil and part of ExxonMobil, and Standard of Ohio, which became Sohio, now part of BP. Rockefeller, who had rarely sold shares, held over 25% of Standard stock at the time of the breakup. He and all of the other stockholders received proportionate shares in each of the 34 companies. Rockefeller had reduced control over the oil industry. However, over the next 10 years, the breakup would prove to be immensely profitable. The company's combined net worth rose fivefold, and Rockefeller's personal wealth jumped to $900 million. And one of the best parts of capitalism and entrepreneurship was that it gave entrepreneurs the resource and ability to make far greater social contributions. Rockefeller's charitable giving began with his first job as a clerk at the age of 16, when he gave 6% of his earnings to charity, as recorded in his personal ledger. By the time he was 20, his charity exceeded 10% of his income. Much of his giving was church-related. His church was later affiliated with the Northern Baptist Convention, which formed from American Baptists in the North with ties to their historic mission to establish schools and colleges for freedom in the South after the American Civil War. Rockefeller attended Baptist church every Sunday. When traveling, he would often attend services as African American Baptist congregations, leaving a substantial donation. As Rockefeller's wealth grew, so did his giving, primarily to educational and public health causes, but also for basic science and the arts. Rockefeller believed in the efficiency movement, arguing that to help an inefficient, ill-located, unnecessary school is a waste. It is highly probable that enough money has been squandered on unwise educational projects to have built up a national system of higher education adequate to our needs, if the money has been properly dedicated to that end. Rockefeller and his advisors invented the conditional grant, which requires the recipient to root the institution in the affections of as many people as possible, who, as contributors, became personally concerned, and thereafter may be counted on to give to the institution their watchful interest and cooperation. In 1884, Rockefeller provided major funding for Atlantis Baptist Female Seminary in Atlanta for African American women, which became Spelman College. His wife, Laura Spelman Rockefeller, was dedicated to civil rights and equality for women. When speaking about Laura, Rockefeller said, "Her judgment was always better than mine. Without her keen advice, I would be a poor man." The Spelman family, along with John Rockefeller, were ardent abolitionists before the Civil War and were dedicated to supporting the Underground Railroad. John Rockefeller was impressed by the vision of the school and removed the debt from the school. The oldest existing building on Spelman campus, Rockefeller Hall, is named after him. After his retirement, Rockefeller also helped pay for the University of Chicago, donating more than $80 million to it. He helped found the Rockefeller Foundation and the Rockefeller Institute of Medical Research, which was later named Rockefeller University. Rockefeller founded the Rockefeller Sanitary Commission in 1909, an organization that eventually eradicated the hookworm disease. By the end of his life, he had donated more than $530 million to various causes. Also, though Rockefeller wasn't perfect, he cared a lot about his credibility. He often struggled to get the amount of money he needed to achieve his goals, but he won the trust of banks and investors, enabling him to take his business farther than he would have been able to otherwise. It's said that Rockefeller remembered 3,000 of his employees' names, an impressive accomplishment that showed his employees that he cared about them, pushing his credibility through the roof because of the respect they likely had for him. By showing people we care about them, by doing something as simple as remembering their names, we can boost our credibility. In addition, it'll help us build stronger relationships with those we work with. At last, we'd like to end this advice, though common nowadays, but something revolutionary in his time, that we should simply do what we love. If your only goal is to become rich, you'll never achieve it. John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller truly loved what he did. He knew business would be better if there was something bigger behind it than money. I know nothing more despicable and pathetic than a man who devotes all the hours of the waking day to the making of money for money's sake.